Hey guys, how are you doing? So in this video we will be ranking all the ADCs in the new season and see who is gonna take the crown, right? I personally will give a rating based on the new most important objective, let's say, which is like the shoes. If you manage to take the shoes on those champions as well, or if you manage to take the argument of the shoes, the win rate of the game exponentially becomes insane. So the priority of this list, of course, will become related to trying to get this argument as soon as possible. So these champions are fairly stronger to actually get this kind of empowerment. So they will help you to manage to get it faster and also to take it consistently, right? Let's get into it and hope you will enjoy the video. So the first thing we will start off is with Aphelios. Crit carry, pretty good on the scaling side. The problem of the new patch is that we are focusing a lot towards the early game. So early game becomes one of the, let's say, important part of the game. And getting the first blood, getting the first tower, I don't think Aphelios excels at anything of that. He's pretty strong with the swap with the Gravitum, so he can get the Gravitum with a stomp, and then maybe with a crash pick or something like that. He could get the first blood. Getting the tower is really related to how your jungler plays around you and which support you have. So because of that, I'm gonna place him in the B tier. He is not insanely strong, he is not insanely bad. It also depends on the player, and that's why he will go in B. A second, we have the Ashe. So Ashe is pretty interesting, and she's a non-hit attacker. Pretty much, like you can play her with Kraken. Currently, I am playing her with Kraken, Blade, Terminus. So she's a non-eater. Pretty much, I don't see her being crit anymore. But that's just me, maybe. And she's pretty strong, especially in the early lane. She's really good to make first bloods. So we will put that in S tier. The only bad thing of Ashe, not making her the best or the S plus tier, is that she's not really dealing much damage into tanks. That is causing her to fall off a bit later in the game, especially because now there are a lot of tanks and it's really hard to kill them. Ashe is not really excelling at that, and she doesn't even have a much high damage either. So she's falling more into the utility route, but she's also really reliable. Kaylin has probably everything you want in this season. She has a lot of pressure on the lane. She can actually get first tower faster than everyone else, especially because bot lane it's easier to take as tower. Taking bot side tower is probably the easiest bet. You know, if you manage to get the push, if you manage to be shadowed, bot side tower is usually the most common to fall. So prioritizing playing for bot side and prioritizing the bot side tower became probably a thing, and made it very easy for Caitlyn to take the first spot. Aside from that, Caitlyn really strong as well to make a setup. You can just place the trap underwards, after a stun, follow up, chain CC, and then first blood. Pretty easy to take first blood with her, pretty easy to take towers. Also, objective setup is nothing to be mad about, right? She has a pretty good damage, maybe not the best into tanks, but she's also really good into squishes, so she pretty much has everything. A really good reliable pick that is currently having the crown, in my opinion. I feel like stuff like Cassiopeia or in general mages that need to scale a lot and they don't offer much are just of course the tier. So we're not gonna dive too much into that. Simply the more early game you have, the better it is, and Cassiopeia needs tier, so she's falling down a bit, right? So we have the Corki. Corki was really strong back in the time before the new patch and the new season. He was basically S tier, if not more. He was really good into squishes. Right now, I feel like he fold a bit. It's really bad as a pick. Just because he needs, again, to close the tier. And he's kind of towards the scaling side. He doesn't have that much prio, technically speaking. He's a really versatile champion. So objectively, it's pretty good. He also deals some good damage on tanks if you plan out to not play lethality, but it's not even that much, right? So I would be placing him into the B tier. Pretty good champion anyway, but I see him more as a mid laner with control mages or stuff like that. I don't really see him on bot side, especially because he's not really the kind of champion that I see to actually get the push and in general have a really good strong early, right? If you play for the early game, then you must fall on the mid-late game, and then you don't really deal damage to tanks in the case of full AD. If instead you play for late game, you really fall on the early game, and then probably something else could be better, right? Draven is a really strong pick, especially for the first blood, as you know. Not really good into taking first tower, especially if you match it up with an engager. I feel like the only problem of Draven is that he has really good damage and everything, but it's really hard to play into tanks. Like if you play Draven, your damage into squishes is really high, but the damage on the tanks is almost non-existent, and the skill gap and the skill level to actually play the champion is really, really high. So I personally wouldn't recommend it. It's still a really good pick, but it probably falls on the B tier. We have Ezreal. Ezreal is pretty interesting as a pick, right? I feel like Ezreal is insanely strong if he manages to get the shoes empowerment, because the shoes empowerment will most likely be the one of the Ionias. And if you take Ionia's boots on Ezreal, this guy becomes a beast. Like you have so much ability haste, you can spam like a madman. Your positioning is almost like not able to get catched by anything, okay? So Ezreal is pretty strong on that, but his early game is kinda lacking. So if you pair it with like a Karma or something like that, it's pretty interesting. But also his damage on tanks is pretty low. I will place him in A, but since his damage on tanks is really low, I will place him on B. It really depends on the Cyrilda and how you play him, so just keep that in mind. For my personal experience, a good Ezreal could actually be BA in this patch, sorry. And that's why we will put him there. Jhin is probably really, really good on the technical side of like being useful, but his damage towards the tanks is always non-existent, kind of. Really good damage into squishes, good to take first, the first blood, but taking also first tower is really, really, really hard with the Jhin. Reason being that he has only like 4 shots, and most of the times you will always be useful for your team, right? I personally wouldn't recommend to play Jhin that much. It doesn't really fall on the C tier, it's always like near the B, but I feel like he lacks a lot towards the objective of the new season, so getting first blood, tower, or like, everything else. So the objective side, it's always good, but it's not the best pick. So I will put him on the C tier for now. Maybe a bit low, but we just keep it safe. Jinx is a pretty good champion. Like she scales a lot. She's a really good crit carry. She is slightly better than Aphelios. Reason being that she can rocket. If she can rocket the wave, she can always just push. So taking prio for her is not always like a problem. There are a few matchups where Jinx loses. So for example against like Seraph support, Seraph ADC, Victor ADC, like those kind of mages that can always like kind of outpush you, especially like after level 4-5. So you can have prio in the early game, but once they just close like a lost chapter, for example, you found out yourself having a really bad time, but at least you have some kind of range compared to Aphelios. So Jinx is slightly better than the Aphelios. We will place him. I mean, A probably not. We will just place him over him, right? So I think Jinx always like is slightly better than the Aphelios, so we placed him a bit higher than him, right? So we'll actually do it in this way. I feel like this is the order, right? So we will place them in order as well. Kai'Sa, really good champion. It's actually pretty good. Like she scales really well, really good damage into tanks, really good first blood. Tower side, not really that good, but she has pretty much everything she needs to actually shine. The problem of the Kai'Sa is that she is getting really hard countered by the top picks, which are Caitlyn and Ashe. So I can't really place her on an Ig, on an Ig ladder. And you should probably ban either the Ashe or the Caitlyn if you want to play the Kai'Sa. But yeah, if you snowball this champion is a beast. She can pretty much do everything. And the only downside of this champion is the range. I feel like having a lot of range in this season is insanely strong. And as you can see, like the more range you have, the more high you're in the list, kind of. Kai'Sa is a little exception to that, because she can also like go AP, AD, and she's really flexible on the playstyle, really good for explode potential again, and she kind of deserves the A place, let's say. Elisa is pretty interesting. She got, not destroyed. She got changed. I tried her a bit. She feels weird. I don't really know how to say. I don't know if it's me or not, but yeah, the first blood potential is a bit lower, I'd say. I'm not sure about that again. I tried there like 5-6 games, maybe they are not enough. I will say she's really good on the first blood, by the way, like anyways, like it's the champion that is aimed for that. Really good at taking priority for the objectives. The only downside is that she doesn't really deal much damage to tanks. Like she actually does, but like the meta champions like Maokai or stuff like that, they actually counter her a lot. Poppy support is insanely strong, Sejuani, stuff like that, they still are on the top. So I would actually just place it for now on the bottom of the B tier. Kog'Maw is pretty interesting. I feel like he's a really strong, like sleepy champion. But the problem is, again, the top 2 picks are countering Kog insanely well. So it's really hard if you like get matched against the Ashe the Caitlyn, you never have prio. And not having prio in the early game again in this match is like in general in this season, sorry, is really, really bad. And that will cause you 99% of the times to actually lose either tower or get first blooded because they will just dive you. So because of that, Kog'Maw really has an hard time on against the Eiger ADC picks. I would actually place him probably on the C. But keep in mind, Kog can also be played AP. AP Kog probably has a chance against all the champions on here. And it surely is insanely strong if you manage to snowball it. But I don't really see it. I see it more as a scaler again. He's really strong on the lane, but he kind of loses prio in the early. And once you again get back with like a lost chapter or like in general some AP items, you can actually get it back. But I wouldn't. I just wouldn't pick him, right? Lucian is really good for the first blood. He kind of falls after that. Like, I don't really see a decent item on Lucian since like a lot. If you play Kraken, I feel like you miss damage. If you play Essence Sliver, you miss attack speed. So you need to go Alacrity to play it. And the damage to tanks is almost non-existent. So we'll probably place it on the C tier because of that. And the tower pushing potential is actually fine. But I've seen better, of course. Like, if you see the top of like of the picks, that's for sure not the best thing, right? So we'll place him on the C tier. EMF, it's just insane. Like, she's insanely strong as a champion. In the laning phase, flawless. She can just kill everyone. She can get the first blood. She can take the tower easily because of her passive. So this champion is actually what you really want to play in this season. The only problem of the MF currently is that she doesn't have much damage on the crit side. But yeah, you can also play the Bloodthirster, making you like an insane pushing machine without any problems, taking trades and stuff like that. The main problem remains the damage on the tanks. So if you take her, be aware that you need to have a comp that is not actually against tanks. Of course, we're talking about the AD version. I will never pick the Comet one. Comet one is good to take prio, but then you simply want to like pray that your team is good and you want to use the ultimate, right? So we'll place her on the A tier. Nilah is pretty interesting. She is a champion that doesn't have prio, but she actually is pretty good if you manage to play her properly. She's not bad. She's not like the tier, but she's really niche pick. And it's really, really hard to pop off with her. If you manage to do it, and like after the third wave crash, you manage to like get it back. Taking tower is pretty easy with Nilah in the end. And also taking first blood is like a matter of seconds if you play it properly. So depending on the matchup, I will say she's B tier. And she should be actually played a bit more, in my opinion, to actually have some kind of idea of how strong she is. Because she has like a lot of scaling potential. She can push towers easily. She basically has everything. And the only problem again is I don't feel like she has much damage to tanks. Aside from like later on the game where you can actually even like one shot probably squishes and stuff. So yeah, probably B tier. I'll take her a bit lower, but again, as probably OTPs know better, they know how much strong the champion is. So Samira is pretty interesting again. She has a good first blood potential. Tower side, not really. The damage on tanks is almost non-existent. Not only saying that Poppy and like champions like that, Poppy, Sejuani, they are still in the meta and they are still insanely strong. So playing Samira looks really, really hard unless you're playing it on counter pick. She's still a really good option, and she should be tried to be played. They are around the same, like Samir and Nile are around the same, so they have to be played in counter pick. They don't have much prio, and you gotta be aware of like all the champions above her, so they can actually make a lot of pressure. There are a lot of like ways to counter the Samira. To play her properly, you really need to be good mechanically, and just be aware of like exhaust barriers and stuff like that. Senna is always a flip when it comes to like meta. She could be insanely good. She could be insanely bad. I feel like she's good as a champion. Maybe not insane. What makes Senna good, in my opinion, now is that you can play her with Tahm-Kench. So if you play Tahm-Kench, you can actually flex him. It's more like on a competitive side rather than maybe a solo queue wise. But you can actually like first pick the Senna in the first phase, or like the Tahm-Kench. Maybe Tahm-Kench even better because by picking Tahm-Kench first, you can place him on top lane or ADC, and then, of course, play the Senna. So Senna itself is not an insane pick, and making Tahm-Kench Senna bot lane will not like help you a lot to take the tower. It's more of like a weak side lane, but you can actually focus more on the top side part of the map in that case. Still, Senna Tahm-Kench will be really hard to play against, like a Caitlyn Ashe or stuff like that. You would 95% of the cases lose tower. So I still keep her in the C tier, but with the flexing potential that she can give, she will probably be B tier or something like that. Sivir is really good at pushing. She has not really a first blood like kind of play style. She's not really first bloody, but played like with a pair or like with Janna or stuff like that. She's insanely strong. I uh, I feel like she has even like an edge against the Caitlyn and Yash because of like her E. So she kind of has a way to fight back. The problem of the Civil is that even if you take like 3-4 items, it feels like you're not progressing at all, especially if you're not playing a front to back. She's pretty strong if you play against tanks, in technically speaking, because they have to like kind of engage in a front to back. You kind of are playing the fight that you want. Assassins are not really being played right now, from what I've saw. She probably is again on the B tier. Most of the, the ADCs that I see are like pretty much B tier, and it especially depends on like the kind of comp. Smolder is the problem with Smolder is again it's like either 100 or 0, and Smolder should be probably good technically, especially because if you manage to take the shoes empowerment, you have a lot of CDR and you can spam a lot. Champion itself is really good in the later in the game, but in lane it's kind of non-existent. So because of that, I can't really give a Nike perspective of this champion. No pushing tower potential, no first blood potential at all unless getting ganked. He's probably like more of a mid laner with the control mages and stuff. And I'm not really into playing him right now. So we place him on the C tier, probably above the Lucian, and that's pretty much for him. So Tristana is probably a bomb. That's what I like to call it, okay? She probably falls under the A category, and reason being that she's not really strong into like the Ashe or the Caitlyn, but she's really strong into pretty much almost in the meta right now. She actually wins into the Ezreal. She wins probably in the Kai'Sa, especially Fed. There are like a few matchups that are a bit hard, but taking the tower with Tristan is insanely easy. Just try to play her with the bomb plate, not the bomb plating, sorry, like Demolisher, no? To just take the tower easily. There's like the bomb, the damage is insanely high. If you play Lethality, you can just burst explosive towers. So I feel like the champion is being a bit underplayed. The champion is still insanely strong. First block potential is high. First tower is insanely high. Probably could also be played mid lane, but bot side taking tower is insanely easy. Just has to be drafted on a good matchup. And I feel like if you wanna like make a ban with Rist, you either probably ban the Kate or the Ashe. They're a bit painful to play against, especially if you don't manage to kill them on the first run. They actually get you when you're on your way back, right? But yeah, really good champion, should be played more, and probably sleeper OP, I would say. Twitch is, I mean, he got kind of a bit changed and stuff like that. Nothing really insane. He's a good first blooder, and he could be played AP as well to have a decent lane. I don't see him shine in the early game or like in general as ADC with the AD build. So the problem is it's really hard for him to win any kind of matchup. Like he basically loses almost every matchup here of any champion. His best build is AP, and he doesn't really like need to farm. Like he can't really farm because of like how hard the lanes are when you play the champion. So yeah, it's a good first blooder. Not really good at taking first tower, then it kinda roams. I will probably place him on the C tier still. I would love to see him shine a bit more, but yeah. As it doesn't even deal that much damage to tanks, I will just simply place him on C. Varus is insanely flexible. Like you can play in Comet even after like the mana nerf, which is like the E as an high cost of mana. But I don't think this is enough to actually destroy the Varus lethality. I kinda played him, made almost even more damage than like the lethal tempo version, and also no hit one. Varus just has everything you want in this meta. The only problem of Varus is probably that he doesn't have the same pressure of like a Caitlyn or Ashe. So it's pretty much maybe below them. But since now the meta is more forwarded towards like a tank meta where like there are a lot of tanks, Ashe probably just falls under the Varus. It was like the opposite before, so it was like Ashe was stronger than the Varus because of like the utility way. The ult of Ashe is more consistent than the ult of Varus, but since now we're not talking about the utility but the damage, Varus has a slight edge and should be actually played because of how much damage he can deal just with like 3 autos into spell to champs like Maokai, right? So really good pick, really consistent, good damage, good range, good tower, pretty much everything you want in this meta. Pain, pretty interesting, good pick. She has 95% of the lanes that are insanely hard to play, and that's probably her main problem. I would love to see her having like some kind of love when it comes to like some resistances or stuff like that. Like maybe a power shift towards from more damage to like less damage and more kind of HP. Because currently, like with how all the lanes are fast and like how the game is like fast paced, if you don't have a good early, you're pretty much useless. So even if like she has an insane good damage, she has a good early potential with the pressed attack for sure. But again, most of like of the champions appear, they just completely destroy you unless you technically outplay them mechanically, which means that you really need to be good. I wouldn't advise to play Vayne. There are like many other champions that that shine. The only way you can actually play her is with Lulu or stuff like that. So that's why she actually falls on the D tier, but like the first D tier, not the last. Saya is a pretty good pick, especially if you play her on a counter pick position. If you pick her against like a lot of like engagers stuff like that, she's pretty good, but she's not really proactive. That's what I like to say. As she's not really proactive, proactiveness means that you like wanna take first blood or like taking tower. She's not really proactive towards that. Someone does it for you. You have the setup, and then you actually get maybe the first blood or like you get the first tower. So this is not really on you, right? It's again a counter pick style of ADC. It's not bad, but it's not even that good, right? So we will probably place her on the C tier. I still haven't figured out like a decent build for her. Like I played Kraken with Navori, stuff like that, but her damage feels really low. Without crit, she just doesn't feel that much right of the Kraken, right? I would love to see a remake of the Kraken just to make her shine. Just 25% crit on the Kraken could change a lot the way Xayah plays. I don't see her playing Essence River again because the attack speed, the DPS is just too low to be played like that. Zeri is pretty bad, okay? She's pretty bad. She has a really bad lane. She has a really hard time pushing up. She has at least a 3 item requirement, and she almost doesn't even deal damage to tanks. She probably is even under the Cassiopeia from my perspective. But let's just say that as Cassiopeia is a mage, we just we just keep it down there because yeah, we hate mages. This is again kind of a not sleeper OP, but like he's really really strong. He actually can get the first tower easily if you think about that. So again, just a W on under the tower of bot side. So Ziggs bot lane probably gonna have like an insane win rate again. Pretty much just like the Tristana, but not having an hard matchup, let's say. Like playing Ziggs on bot side is almost always like a sure call. You never make a mistake picking him, and it's always easy to like try to get prio or like avoid dying. It's also really good under the dives. You can actually be almost solo in the lane and let your support roam. So there are a lot of things to be talking about the Ziggs. Of course, we don't have a really good first blood potential, and just keep in mind, I'm not really going into like the first blood idea. It's also like because they're probably gonna change it to like free kills, so the first free kills. But still, like the champions that are a bit more bloody, they have like a little edge to compare to the others, right? So because of that, Ziggs goes into the A tier, really flexible. You can free speak him in blue side. They don't know where you are, mid lane or ADC. And yeah, you can get tower easily. That's pretty important. And of course, the objective pressure is really high. So guys, thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like or subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and watch some other, of course. I just wanted to tell you that, of course, just because I made this tier list, this doesn't like reflect the reality of the things, but it's just overall a talk of what I feel like and what I feel like should be a bit more noticeable in the games, right? I don't play anymore to like try hard, let's say, but if I had to, I'll say that yeah, the best pick of the patch currently in Aegiro around the Diamond Plus, Emerald Plus are the Kaylin, the Varus, the Tristana, the Ziggs on some like certain matchups, and of course like the Ashe in some other ways. Again, guys, thanks a lot for watching this, and see you again. Bye.